Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for another program of the Venezuelan American Association of the U.S., also known as VAUS. I am Michael Skoll, president of VAUS. I would like to welcome all of you to today's conversation with Alfredo Romero, executive director of Foro Penal. We will be talking about the human rights situation in Venezuela and all the problems and opportunities that has caused. We are especially honored to have Alfredo here. You know, it is one thing to analyze from afar and criticize, but it is quite another to be in the danger center of the crisis, actively engaged, doing the right thing in the face of serious risk. We admire Alfredo for his vital and courageous work, and we thank him for taking his time to be with us today. A word first about VAUS. The Venezuelan American Association has been promoting exchange between Venezuela and the U.S. for 86 years. Things have changed, of course, since those early days. During this ongoing crisis, VAUS has been diligent in fostering discussion to spark action. We thank you all for accompanying us on our quest for knowledge and for a better future for Venezuela. Ojalá. Now to Alfredo. Alfredo Romero was born in Caracas and is the executive director of the human rights organization Foro Penal, founded in 2005 to provide pro bono legal assistance to victims of arbitrary detention, due process violations, or other human rights violations, including torture or cruel and inhuman treatment. Under Romero's leadership, over 400 lawyers and 5,000 activists across the country are providing assistance to victims of human rights violations and their families. To date, Foro Penal has provided assistance to more than 4,000 people. In addition to his role as executive director of Foro Penal, Romero was in 2015 a fellow with the Carr Center for Human Rights Policy at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government. He is also currently a partner at Hemiob, Romero and Asociados law firm and has been a professor at the Central University of Venezuela and the Andres Bello Catholic University. Romero was also a fellow at the Wilson Center, where he wrote a book called The Repression Clock: The Strategy Behind Authoritarian Regimes. It's quite a read, by the way. I would ask that you take a close look at it. It applies to Venezuela, but it applies to a lot more to other countries. Alfredo obtained his law degree from the Andres Bello Catholic University in 1991 and has an MA in Latin American Studies from Georgetown University and an LLM from the London School of Economics. Since our program will include a Q&A session, you may write questions at any time using the Q&A button at the bottom of the page, and I will present them. Again, write them at any time. I'll get to as many as I can. The program is on the record. We ask media representatives to give credit to VAUS, as well as the speaker, of course, in any coverage of this program. Now to Alfredo, finally. Alfredo, tell us about the Foro Penal and what is happening right now in Venezuela.
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Ambassador Michael Skoll, and you know all this organization which is working on Venezuela and the relationship with the U.S. and particularly to Andres Correa, also who is a Venezuelan journalist, a friend who actually channeled it was a channel in order to connect to you and to this organization. Foro Penal is an NGO that actually practically was formed or initiated its activities in 2002. We, Gonzalo Himio, who is the vice president of Foro Penal, and me, we started representing one guy who was, well, we started representing his family because this guy was killed in 2002 in a protest, big protest in April 11, 2002. This guy, his name actually is particular because his name is Jesus Muhammad. You know, his father was from Lebanon, and his mother was from Venezuela. And well, this was the first case actually at the time. As you can see in my CV, I'm not, or at least at the beginning, 20 years ago, I was not focused on human rights. Actually, was focused on banking law and administrative law, and actually studied in London School of Economics, project financing and things like that. So I've been always focused on the private sector, and mostly, and being a private lawyer. I'm a private lawyer, but at that time I was just a private lawyer with different international clients in Venezuela, etc. But we started as a social action, collaborating with this family, and we represented this family, because of the killing of this guy. And that was the first case, the second case, and at this time, you said that we have represented more than 4,000. Yeah, more than 4,000, but maybe at some point, but at this time we have represented more than 12,000 people actually. These numbers, I mean, it's not that you're wrong in the number. The thing is, every year the number actually increase because there are more people detained every year. Just to give you an idea, in 2014, just in 2014, and this is important because talking about Foro Penal, we actually were an organization before that, and that's what I did, try to create units or representatives all around the country to precisely to represent people that are being politically persecuted. But in 2014, there were, just to give you an idea, there were 11 political prisoners in jail. And when Maduro came to power in 2014, he increased the number to 300. And just at that year, there were more than 3,000 political detainees because of the protests that happened. So this is the answer of how we have, and it's not a success for Venezuela. It's not a success for us that we have represented all these people and that we have, increased the numbers of members of Foro Penal to more than 5,000. It's not a success that we have right now 29 chapters of Foro Penal around in different cities of the world. It's not a success. It's a failure of what is going on in Venezuela, in the sense that repression has increased. That's why Foro Penal has increasing numbers. People forced to exile has increased, to almost 7 million people, and that's why we have representatives all around the world also. Foro Penal has become right now an international organization, not because it's a success, it's because there have been more countries that actually have failed on this kind of a strategy used by authoritarian regimes in order to keep in power. For example, Nicaragua, Cuba. Well, Cuba is a long time ago, but for example, Nicaragua, Bolivia, etc. So and Foro Penal have actually provided them with more information and experience about what from what we have done at this point. And just to conclude this introduction, at this point, Foro Penal has even have a manual for a strategic litigation that actually is the guide that we use in order to represent people and to get people out of prison. But the good news is that if Foro Penal didn't exist, nobody would know how many political prisoners are in Venezuela. If Foro Penal didn't exist, maybe these 12,000 people that we represented and are out of prison at this point, because right now there are 244 political prisoners, but we have released more than 12,000 people, and we still represent this most of these 244 political prisoners. But if we didn't exist, maybe these people, nobody will know about these people. They were in the dark cells, you know, and nobody will know their names, and nobody will actually care about them in some way. So Foro Penal right now, and not Alfredo Romero, Foro Penal is a family of actually we have a very important mystic and you know and will you know to work on that. We have more, as you said, more than 5,000 volunteers that actually represent people. We are not just lawyers, even though we are, you know, the heart maybe of Foro Penal are their lawyers, but we are also formed by what we called active defenders, which are volunteers, non-lawyers that actually promote campaigns, actually help the families of political prisoners, of people being detained. You know, we did many different things in order to promote respect of human rights and also to raise attention of the you know political persecution in Venezuela.
But my question is also how does a lawyer, how does anyone work within a legal system like Venezuela's, which is not quite a proper legal system? How do you maneuver within that kind of situation?
Well, this is an important question, and many people ask that. And we, first of all, it is important to know, and this is not something that I'm saying just me. I mean, there, you know, the UN reports and everything, that the judicial system, I mean, the whole judicial system, talking about the courts, I'm talking about prosecutors, I'm talking about public defense, or public lawyers, or state lawyers, they are not independent. This is important to understand that. And why I'm saying that, not just to answer the questions, because when you work to release political prisoners, for example, who are in jail and actually they are part of a trial, you know, sometimes they don't even have the opportunity of having a trial. There are people, for example, right now with more than 5 years, 7 years in jail on pretrial detention without even one hearing in order to present, or they don't even know what is the accusation, what is the evidence, what they have, I mean, the accusation, you know. But in the end, what happened, what I'm saying is that that's why Foro Penal is not just working on legal, what we call it, the legal actions. That's why we have this manual, a strategic litigation manual, that we actually work on campaigns and international legal actions, not just local. And it's a complex thing of issues. But if you ask me, if we actually get the release of a political prisoner, for example, on courts, or going to courts, or going to hearings like in a free world, this is not what we do. I mean, we have to wait outside courts for a long time. Sometimes on the streets, they don't allow us to get in. We have to, you know, find the ways to get into courts whenever there is a hearing, because it's not that they call us or they publish when a hearing is going on. We have to find out when the hearing is going on. It's not that we are allowed to visit all the times our people that we represent. I mean, most of the times they don't allow us to get into prisons, but we have to find the ways to do it. And so we are more, you know, we have learned how to work on this situation. But we are, in the end, also it is important to know that, you know, talking about why we're still there in some way, and why we're still working in Venezuela. And well, I believe and this is important to know, that even officers, public officers that are now in power, they know that they couldn't be persecuted at some times, and they will count on an organization as Foro Penal to represent them and to help them, because it's something that already happened. We have helped people that were in the government, that were actually part of this system of persecution and repression, and then they have been themselves persecuted by the same system that they were part of. And Foro Penal is the one that actually helped these people. Just an anecdote, very quickly. Once, we receive families and denounces of people that are being detained every day. We receive denounces because we have a call center, and we have for a database of register, and we, receive calls and everything from people being detained and everything. So the first thing that we do is, if there is a family that actually a relative that actually represent this guy, they have to go to our office and talk to us in person, just to know that it's a real person and to know exactly what happened. So once there was this woman that went to my office and talked to me about the son that was actually incarcerated because he was participating in a protest. And I was asking different things. And then I asked, okay, what about the father? And she told me, well, the father cannot come. Why? Well, the father told me to come by myself, but he doesn't want that you know who is him, and that he cannot come to your office because he works. He's an insider, actually. He works in the government, but not just that he works in an institution of the government. This guy was like a commander of the SEBIN, which is the intelligence service agency in Venezuela. So actually, the guy was incarcerated and jailed back by SEBIN officers, and the commander, one of the chiefs there, one of the members, actually sent his mother, his wife, to my office in order for us to represent his son. So you can imagine. I mean, in the end, we are not involved in politics. We, as Foro Penal, represent people right now. Of course, we are against repression, actually a structure and by the current government. We are against of these policies that the government is using and this system of repression. And of course, we oppose to it. But if in the future this government changes and the new government will use repression as a methodology and they violate human rights, of course we will go against them also. So I don't know if this is the answer, or maybe a long one, but anyway.
No, it's fascinating. You're obviously describing something which is not like an episode of Law and Order. As Foro Penal, have you transferred your lessons and methods that you've learned and used in Venezuela to other countries? Are you active in other countries now?
We're not active. Well, we are active in other countries, but as chapters of Foro Penal, more as an ambassadors of Foro Penal, not acting like representing people in other countries. For example, we have a chapter in Madrid. We have a chapter in Miami. Actually, I see our representative in the US connected to this chat right now, to this conversation. And we have we have different chapters around the world, but we don't, at least in these chapters, we don't represent people that their human rights are being violated. What we do is to promote the respect of human rights in Venezuela, and actually we unite all Venezuelans that are actually forced to exile and everything. But we have taught our methodology to lawyers in Nicaragua, in Cuba, to people in Cuba. Actually, I have talked and gave some kind of advice to Belarusian NGOs, and actually have talked to families of people that are being in jail, also to some way to Russians. So what we want to do right now at this moment with what I call the internationalization of Foro Penal is to internationalize our methodology and actually to provide more training to people around the world, because it's not that what happened to Venezuela or what is happening to Nicaragua is not happening to them, just to them. I mean, they are involved in that because they didn't prevent that to happen. But what is happening?
Alfredo, you're being blocked out right now. We'll wait a moment to see whether you can reconnect. May I ask Laurie to call him right now to see if we can reconnect somehow? This can happen. Hold on, we're working on it. Well, while we're waiting, hopefully for Alfredo to reconnect, I might mention that one of my next questions was going to be about the United Nations Independent International Mission for Venezuela, which has just issued a damning report, unusually damning, about the human rights situation in Venezuela, about torture, cruel and inhumane treatment, and I wanted to get Alfredo's reaction to it. We've already had the reaction of the Maduro regime. Let me read what the Maduro regime in Venezuela, part of what has said, that the mission has once again surpassed itself in the fiction it builds on the reality of my country, and denounced that the report was released publicly before being taken to the council to, quote, please the transnational media scoundrels whose vultures can only be pleased with high-tone headlines, unquote. My experience is that the more purple the language of criticism, the more true the what is criticized is likely to be. So I was going to ask Alfredo what his reaction to the international mission. Alfredo.
There was a power. Yeah, there was a problem with the power here, so.
Okay.
I connected through the
We're glad you're back.
So sorry about it.
Sort of talking with the people. What I did, Alfredo, was to mention the United Nations Independent International Mission for Venezuela report, and what it means. I'm sure you know about it. Can you comment on that report?
Yeah, this report was the third report issued by this fact-finding mission. It is important to know that the fact-finding mission has been working since 2019. And the third report, what is most important of that is that it establishes responsibilities, but not just for the material perpetrators, but actually the responsibilities of a like whole structure that works on political persecution. Another important thing, because just understand, this report doesn't refer to more victims than the first report. It refers to the same cases, but establishes very specifically the responsibilities. I mean, who are the perpetrators, who are the, if they are subordinated or not to the structure. And that's what it says, is that there are crimes against humanity, not just because there is a pattern of conduct, but also because there is a chain of command and a structure. But another important thing that this report refers to is the violation of human rights of indigenous people on the border of Venezuela. And this is for the first time there is a detailed report about this situation. Actually, for us, this is very important because we as Foro Penal, we have indigenous group coordination. Our coordinator is an indigenous guy whose name is Olna Ortiz, also a lawyer. And we've been working on representing all these indigenous people that have been politically persecuted. Actually, there was a case in 2019 that some people some of the indigenous people of the Pemon group were killed at the south border of Venezuela. And many people were injured. Actually, many of them were forced to exile, and they are now living in Brazil. I mean, many families, because of this persecution that happened at that time. And this is something that we're working on, and we represent all these people. And also we represent people in Amazonas state where a guy was also killed, and another group of Yanomamis or Yanomamos were also killed and being persecuted. So this is important because for the first time, actually, they referred to this specific issue. And I've always been surprised that the whole world that actually work on environmental issues and work about and talk about indigenous people, and many people in developed countries talk about it. Nobody actually has been talking about this situation that is happening in Venezuela. So this is really important. Talking about this report, it has to be related to the investigation that is currently going at the International Criminal Court. Why? Because the Office of the Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court has opened an official investigation in 2021, and this investigation is going on. And this report, for sure, serve as an evidence or more evidence for what the International Criminal Court is doing. So legally speaking, this report has an important effect because it's not just a report of an NGO or a victim. It's a report of an entity formally created by the United Nations Human Rights Council. So, and also, of course, politically and diplomatically speaking, it is also important because it makes understand the situation with details of what is going on in Venezuela. But also, I believe, I always say that justice has two effects. I mean, for the past, there is justice for the past, for past events, and that's what the report talks about. I mean, in order to establish responsibilities and to provide justice to the victims, people that being tortured, people being forced disappeared, arbitrarily detained, killed, the families, but also for the future, because the effect for the future is prevention. So whenever a person that is working as an insider, that works is working in the government, in this intelligence agency, see that a perpetrator that works with them is referred to in this report, they don't want to be in that picture. They don't want to be there. I believe that this kind of prevention effect in this report, so people will take more care when they will violate human rights of Venezuelans.
Do you think there'll be if the International Criminal Court continues in its work, do you think there'll be a real effect in Venezuela, or what?
I think
go ahead.
Well, this is an important question for me, and that I've been thinking for a long time, because we've been, first of all, it is important to know that there are just 4 Venezuelan lawyers admitted by the International Criminal Court, admitted to litigate before the International Criminal Court, to participate in hearings, to participate in a trial, for example. And 2 of these 4 lawyers are from Foro Penal. One is the vice president of my organization and me. Why I'm saying that we're being involved with the work of the International Criminal Court for a long time ago. Actually, I believe we were the first, I think so, almost for the first Venezuelan NGO that went to the International Criminal Court for sure were us. But I believe that maybe it's the first in the world, because we went in 2002. Actually, they were not, I remember they were placing and building the doors of the International Criminal Court. I mean, they were like, these people like building the whole, the doors, I remember. So we were there when they were actually initiating their job. So we met at that time with the international, the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, the first one, who was Luis Moreno Campo, an Argentinian guy who was the first prosecutor of the International Criminal Court. And we actually went with some of the victims at that time that we believe were actually victims of crimes against humanity. So since 2002, we were leading with this International Criminal Court. Why I'm saying that? Because maybe you will think that we are kind of frustrated, because if we have been dealing with that since 2002, where there is no response, then you will say, well, what is happening? I mean, maybe you're frustrated. No, but we got a response late, of course, in 2018, that when a preliminary examination was initiated, and we got a response in 2021. I mean, justice comes late, but it comes at some point. I mean, I don't know if you have this expression in English, but we say that la justicia tarda pero llega, and so
justice is late, but it arrives.
Exactly. So we believe that we will get justice at some point. Remember that Venezuela is the only country in the Americas with an official investigation open by the International Criminal Court for crimes against humanity. I say for crimes against humanity because it's not that they are not, that, I mean, the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court has already established and determined that crimes against humanity has happened in Venezuela. That happened in 2020. They already said that crimes against humanity has happened. Now what they're doing is investigating who are the perpetrators, who are the people responsible for that. That's what they are doing. That's why they opened the official investigation. So we are in a path that takes some time. But if lawyers like us that believe in justice, we also believe not in justice against the perpetrators, but also in justice in favor of perpetrators. And this is maybe sound kind of contradictory. No, this is what is the due process of law. This is what is rule of law. This is what is the right of defense. So justice takes time. When justice is well provided, when justice is good justice, when also protects the due process of law, and that means that they have to analyze the evidence the right way. It's not that I just, provide with a proof by myself in representation of the victims, and they will take an action against the one that I say. No, they have to ask also the perpetrator, and they have to allow the perpetrator to defend themselves. So this is why it takes long. But we are, after many years, we're in a moment which is extremely important. I think the effects of the International Criminal Court investigation, again, is not just for the past. I mean, what they're investigating, what happened in the past, but also it has an effect in the future also, because it has a prevention, deterrent effect also.
Okay, Alfredo, I hope you are right, and I trust you are right. Ojalá, but there's another expression in English which is very, very common. Justice delayed is justice denied. So we have to see both sides of this. One of the basic questions is the situation in Venezuela getting better or getting worse in terms of human rights?
Well, I think that it could be worse if these reports and these investigations were not happening. The situation will be worse than what it is right now. If I cannot say the situation is better than before, I will say the situation is worse than before, but it could be worse. But yes, why the situation is worse? It's not because these reports or these actions taken by victims and civil society are not good enough. It's because repression, and that's why I always refer to my book or my investigation that I did at the Wilson Center in Harvard, that repression is beneficial for these regimes. I mean,
yes,
and I'm talking about Venezuela, Nicaragua, even Bolivia, Cuba. Repression is being effectively used by these regimes in order to keep in power, and that's why they will never stop using repression. It's a strategy. I mean, I talk about repression, cooptation, and legitimation. Everything. It's a strategy, and they have to build these pillars in order to keep in power and to establish in power for long times. And that's something that maybe the world, the free world, or the human rights defenders around the world are not really understanding much. That's why I always say that we have to work all together in order to create a strategy to oppose to this strategy of authoritarian regimes that of around the world, that actually they work together and they help each other.
yes.
China helped Russia, Russia helped Venezuela, Venezuela, Iran helped Venezuela, Venezuela helps Cuba, Cuba helped Venezuela, Nicaragua, and they work all together. In the UN, for example, they defend each other, they defend themselves, they have the same narrative, they talk to each other, and they use the same methodology. And so yes, you're right, in the sense that the repression continues. The situation is worse than before, but it could be worse if we were not there, and if the international institutions are not paying attention. It could be worse than what it is right now. But yes, we have in some way not Venezuelans, because that the whole world has failed on counter acting against these regimes. But Foro Penal, and I will end with that, it's been very successful in some way.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't work, and that is something that we're totally, we understand that, and we totally agree, on Foro Penal. We are not an institution that is there for the macro problem. I mean, we're not an institution that is there to change the macro problem of repression. We are not an organization that is there to change governments, to change the system. We're an organization that is there for the micro problem, which is the victim. And we have helped many victims. If we weren't there, as I said at the beginning, more than 12,000 people maybe were still in jail and nobody would know about it. If we weren't there, nobody would know about the situation. If we weren't there denouncing locally and international what's going on, nobody would maybe know about it. So we have helped, the mother, the woman, the boy, the girl, the man who is in jail, and we are happy when and this is our satisfaction when we get these people out of jail. We visit them, we are taking care of them, and we are successful in that. I mean, and this is important. That's why again, we are not focused on maybe what the people want, which is a whole change of the situation. We believe and we think, of course, we want that the situation could change in the sense that we have more a free government and not repression used as a methodology to keep in power. Of course, we want that, but we are not, as an organization, focused on that. We focus on the victim. We focus on the sons and daughters of political prisoners. We even give them on December, how you say it? I forgot the word, regalos. How you say regalos?
Gifts, presents.
Gifts presents to the daughters and sons is something maybe too small to do, but it's important for them, and we make these people happy. But also we get and we have gotten political prisoners out of jail.
Very good. Believe me, people appreciate that. I certainly appreciate that. Let me remind people that if you want to ask a question of Alfredo, just click the Q&A button on your lower right on your screen and ask the question, and we will present it. Alfredo, I want to turn to the issue of migration. The human rights situation that you described has produced the biggest outward migration in Latin American history. It is probably rivaling Syria right now for the biggest migration in the world, and it has repercussions all over the place. In the US, for example, very recently, a Venezuelan migration movements within the US from Miami or Texas to Martha's Vineyard has rivaled hurricanes in terms of of headlines. Do you have any thoughts on this? Will this wave continue? Will it increase? Well,
first of all, migration and this, what you're talking about this transferring of migrants from Florida to Massachusetts and Cape Cod and to Martha's Vineyard and everything, it has become a problem of a local problem of the United States, a part of the local politics. And I get sometimes surprised as a Venezuelan that people are talking about the migrants and everything, but nobody's talking about the real problem, which is that most of these migrants, I will say that 80% or more, because we actually have our representatives in the US have talked to some of them, are Venezuelans. So the problem is that many Venezuelans are doing their best efforts, even risking their lives in order to go to the to the US or to any other countries around the world. What is the most important thing for us, without, talking about the US local politics, which are not what we know about it, is that just to tell you about a specific figure and very objective information. Whenever the fact-finding mission was created, the resolution that created the fact-finding mission, the Human Rights Council, the UN Human Rights Council resolution, indicated that one of the reasons that why the fact-finding mission is created is, because of repression, all these kind of problems that are going on, and crimes against humanity and all that. But they refer to the Venezuelans that are being forced to exile, forced to leave the country. And they refer to more than 4 or almost 4 million Venezuelans in 2019. And now, after 2 years of the fact-finding mission working on Venezuela, the number is not a number that I invented or created. It's a number that actually was published and was told by the United Nations. Right now, they say, the United Nations, that almost 7 million Venezuelans have been forced to exile. So almost a double in less than 4 years, in 3 years. So the number has doubled. And that's why you will see more migrants in the US. But these migrants are not the usual ones. Salvadorians. I also was listening to Biden, President Biden, in an interview on a press conference. He was saying that the problem is not just Salvadorians or Hondurans or Mexicans that are going to the US. The problem is that Venezuelans are going to the US, more than ever. I remember in 2014, because we have also our legal international coordinator, Foro Penal, is specialized on immigration. He's an immigration lawyer in the US. He's also as a volunteer of Foro Penal, and he helps us in international legal issues. And I remember talking to him and about the situation. And in 2014, Venezuela didn't appear on the 10th, on the list of 10 countries with more immigrants or with more migration than the United States. I mean, as the nationality of migrants in the United States, we didn't appear there. After 2014, we were on that number. The nationality, this list of 10 nationalities. Right now, Venezuela is the first country with more migrants in the United States. So after 6 years, 7 years. So this problem, the answer to your question, if you talk about Venezuela, if you talk about Nicaragua, if you talk about Cuba also, but if you talk also maybe, hope not, about probably Colombia, you will see more migrants going to the US from that specific countries.
Okay, here's a question from Andres Correa, whom we both know. How can people from abroad help the heroic work Foro Penal does?
Well, first of all, I think that the best way to help us is to be part of our chapters internationally. You can register as an active defender in our webpage, which is foropenal.com, and you can be part of it. Of course, well, this is the best way. And then in order to collaborate, like financially or things like that, is an issue that our chapters are the ones who actually channel this, and they are the ones who actually help us whenever we travel and whenever we participate in a conference and everything internationally, whenever we go to these meetings of the international organization. So the best way to participate is to be part of our chapters, to talk to to our coordinators. We have, for example, a coordinator in the US, Munira Munoz, who is a participant. He's part of this forum. She's listening to us, and they are, very nice people also to work with, and that's the best way. I mean, to be part of it, to register as that. It is important. I don't want to forget regarding how to collaborate with us. Of course, to collaborate also with us is to pay attention to what we do, and to help us and to promote our work. But this weekend, from Friday to Sunday, we have the premiere of, for the first time, that we are showing our documentary called In Key of Justice, which is, we will put it on YouTube just for 3 days, from Friday to Sunday. It's free, and you can see part of our job. But more than that is how something that we do, because I didn't tell you that, but I'm also a musician. I always say that I'm a human being, then a musician, then a lawyer. And actually, as a musician, we have connected music with the human rights narrative. And this is the way how we channel our message. And we, in this documentary, it shows a tour around Venezuela, where we went to different remote towns, and we talk to victims, and we play music to them spontaneously. And so people from these remote towns came and talked to us, and we were part of these concerts. And this is something that happened in 2021, when the pandemic was there, and it was very difficult to travel around the country without gasoline and so this documentary actually shows the situation around Venezuela, the real one, and our work and the victims, and it's a combination of music and human rights. So I'm telling you that because this is the way how we also look for collaborations. For example, we have done these concerts, like talking about human rights and playing music in the US, in Madrid, and we have a cover charge for that, and that's just how we have financed also some of our travels and job that we do and everything. So this is a way how that people can help us, for example, going to these concerts, to these events that we do, that we organize. We're gonna organize, for example, we're gonna organize this kind of concert that we call it Trovadores por los Derechos Humanos, which is human rights minstrels or something like that, maybe the translation. We're gonna do one in Washington. We have done one already, but now the one that we're doing is more with the participation of another artist. It's more a big issue than before, and we're going to do one in Washington with the collaboration of other NGOs. The one that we did in Madrid, for example, was with the collaboration of Amnesty International. We're planning to do another one at the Hague. Actually, we're organizing one at the Hague in the Netherlands. And well, just one of ways. For another thing is we are right now collecting gifts, presents for the daughters and sons of political prisoners. And this is something that's going on in the US with our coordinator, Munira Munoz. So we're collecting these presents in order to send it to Venezuela. That's something that's going on at this right now. So it's also a way to collaborate with us.
Alfredo, could you please send us the information about this documentary and the link to it, so we can send it around to our members?
Great. Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, I will send the invitation and everything. Yeah, great.
Okay. Here's one from George Quintero. Is Foro Penal in contact working with CODES, Comisión para los Derechos Humanos del Estado Zulia? That's the Commission for Human Rights in the state of Zulia, which is in Venezuela.
Not that I know. Maybe actually our Zulia coordinator is connected right now. Is one of the participants. Maybe she can answer, Laura Balbuena. She can She can say something, she can write something about it, but I don't know exactly if we are maybe not really that I know, not really. And Laura, I don't know if it's connected or not, but I can find out. But we are, of course, we are in relation with many NGOs in Venezuela, and not just national, but also the international ones that are still in Venezuela.
Okay, here's one more question. It's a bit of a political challenge. 5 U.S. presidents from both parties have been in power since Chavismo arrived in 1999, challenging the state of law. Now Democrats open their borders and welcome them. But what about helping to fix the real problem, meaning the 30 millions of Venezuelans suffering there, the lack of basic rights? How many more excuses and double speeches must Venezuelans hear from Washington and Florida authorities?
Yeah, this is
I don't know if
this
you
is a no, this is a complex question. I remember I live in Venezuela. I work with the Venezuelans, and you know, maybe I will tell the person who asked to read at least the end of my book, where I analyze some kind of the international actions that are being taken and the mistakes, some of the mistakes of the international actions. That I don't want to talk about it, not because I don't want it to talk about it, it's because it will take a long discussion. I mean, it's more than talking about human rights, it's more than talking about international politics. It doesn't mean that I'm not aware of that. It doesn't mean that I'm not interested in that, of course, but it's not like a discussion or an answer that it can be, you know, tell in just few words. But just to conclude with this, I mean, answer, sometimes Venezuelans think about the international community as a solution. I believe the international community is important, for example, to raise the attention of human rights situation and human rights abuses. When you talk about politics, sometimes we have to understand, or most of the times we have to understand that politics is also a very, I mean, locals, I mean, Venezuelans are the ones really responsible for that. And we have, at least our, you know, Venezuelans, I not want to talk about any specific person or institution or group, but for sure we have failed.
Okay.
Politically speaking,
I much appreciate the tone of your answer, and we all understand that. Do you have any just final brief comments? We're coming up to the end.
Well, my final comment to the international community and also to the human rights defenders, that we have to keep fighting. We have to keep there. We have to keep working. We have to. I have a song that actually is it's a song that actually tells that we have to. It takes the whole life to work for freedom. I mean, freedom takes the whole life. It's not that something that you actually work and you have it, and then you keep it, and then you don't do anything else. I mean, freedom, you can never take freedom for granted. So something that you have to be working all the time. That's something that we work all the time. Even if we have a very important consequence of what we do, and we had, you know, the whole freedom, doesn't mean that we will not continue to do what we're doing. So, but it's not something that you do it just for one day and then you just leave it. In order to work on that, you have to work it every day, and you have to feel it. I mean, you have to and you have to feel the satisfaction of helping people and giving the opportunity to families and people in jail to get their freedom.
Thank you very much, Alfredo. I'm certain that all of our participants are as impressed with you and Foro Penal as I am. Thank you for what you're doing in Venezuela. Keep up your work, keep us informed, and be as careful as you possibly can under the circumstances.
Thank you.
I would also like to thank Andres Correa for helping to bring Alfredo to us. Thanks to the hardworking association team for making this event possible, Linda Calvet and Lauri Dominguez. I'd like to mention Lina Delgado, who has now left us as executive director of the Colombian American Association and deputy director of VAUS. We're really sorry to see her go. Fortunately, Lauri Dominguez is stepping in to take over her responsibilities in VAUS, and we are very grateful. And we wish Lena well with her new work. Now, if you are interested in joining the Venezuelan American Association, please contact our team via today's invitation. Your memberships make our work possible. Thank you, all of you, for participating. We look forward to meeting with you again soon. Thank you again, Alfredo. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.